Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. We're back, and you're back, or you're new. If you're new, welcome. We are the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses the things schools may not have prepared you for. And as always, I'm AJ. I'm the co-host, and across from me, holding down the other mic, is Jason. Jason, how you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be back with you guys.
Yes, this is our third episode. This is getting fun. This is getting exciting the more and more we talk about this kind of stuff. So on the last episode, we had a great discussion on if college was for you. Again, we just started the podcast off, diving in the deep end. This one, if you listened to the show and realized colleges was for you, congratulations. If you realized it wasn't necessarily for you, congratulations. Remember, we're just here to give you the facts and give you some ideas and perspectives so you can make the decision. Today, we're going to be discussing on the second episode of our pre-college series, Options After High School, the Education Route. And we're going to be discussing the various options of secondary education the listeners have upon graduating high school. I know this is something near and dear to Jason's heart. I remember when I was in high school looking into colleges, I didn't pay much attention to JUCO or technical colleges just because of my situation. So this episode would have been really a lot of help for me getting better at understanding the different options, especially outside of I had that natural 4-year university or bust mentality. So I know Jason's really excited about this, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say as well. Jason?
Absolutely. I said in a previous episode that I was first generation, but I had a unique experience for most people who were first generation. My parents recognized very early on that career-wise, if you wanted to have more opportunities, that education could in many ways help at that. That is, they spent much of their years working for individuals who easily moved up ahead of them, or they worked for individuals with less experience or even less ability in many situations, simply because they started at a higher place because they had a degree that allowed them into that role or function. And that cemented with them the idea that you needed education of some sort. Now, the type of education, right? Most of us, I think, default to, okay, you need a 4-year college degree. But I spent a lot of time early on and later on during my teaching of career readiness and professionalism about the different options for education and what education means, learning versus education, training versus education being the formal sense, learning being the acquisition of knowledge, and then training being learning how to do something. And that's where I got into the dichotomy of schools, the various options for education after high school and what that would mean for you.
Well, that's really cool. I'm like I said, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about all this. But before we get into today's main topic and our quick question, be sure to follow the show on Instagram and Twitter. We are at Reschool'd Pod. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please be sure to click the follow button on your podcast app and check out our website, reschool'd.com. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love, if you have questions that you would like answered on the show, we'd love to use those. So please check us out.
Absolutely.
As for today's quick question, this one's a pretty personal one. This is pretty interesting. But Jason, did you get into your first choice of college?
Yes, I did. But there's a caveat there. I only applied to one college.
Way to have a backup plan.
Yeah, right. It was more about my position, finances, availability, and timing. So in high school, I was a very poor student all the way through school, all the way up, I would say, until 8th grade. 8th grade, I was making D's, and it was questionable whether I was going to get out of that grade. And at that point, I had a heart-to-heart with my parents. My brother was always an exceptional performer in terms of academics. He just did really well in school, and I didn't. So I spent that next year really working hard, studying, trying to show that I was capable of doing well, and I did. I taught myself how to study where I realized I couldn't study before. I didn't know how to study, at least before, effectively. And so I made good grades the rest of high school, I guess, during the period that it counted. And I happened to be fairly decent at test taking, which was a huge advantage for me there in the end. And taking the SAT, I made a pretty decent score by comparison to what you'd expect for someone in my position in terms of my educational background. I didn't have the parents who reinforce studying and those types of habits along and along. So I had to acquire that on my own, and I did at the right time, and it worked out for me. So my brother was a year ahead of me, and he being in the same position as I was, he went to a mid-sized state school because he had a partial scholarship. And as soon as I was able, I applied to that one school with my intentions of going there if I got in. And I was thinking along the lines of applying to a second school, but I got in very early acceptance. So it obviated, if not to use a ridiculous word, but it made unnecessary the task of applying to different schools. So that being said, I applied to one school, I got in, I got a scholarship to it. It paid for most things, so it was affordable for me. I still had to live and things like that, of course. So I had to come up with some money, but it just worked. And so that was my experience. So I did get into my first and only choice.
Well, and that's mine's similar to that. I did get into one of my first. I mean, I applied to multiple colleges and I got into both, but I chose a different one than probably most would think. So I applied to I guess you would say, a smaller mid state school, and then I applied to a private school, which was well known in the area in the state for their medical area. Because remember, I wanted to be pre med when I first got into college, and I got into both. I was accepted into both, and in the private school, I was actually accepted and was offered scholarships, but the scholarships weren't even close. So scholarship plus hope, because in the state of Georgia we have hope, it wouldn't even come close to paying off the entire tuition. And so I decided I'm going to stay in my hometown because my hometown had a college. That's where my dad was the dean of the School of Business. Another reason why I wanted to not be in business to begin with. I didn't want him to know all the failures that I had in class because he'd have known. But but I decided to stay at home because it was just the cheaper option. So that's did I get into my first choice? I got in. I just didn't actually take it. I figured I would use what I have in front of me, the more strategic way of using what's in front of me to propel me later on. Because I always figured if I was going to go to med school, I'd still have to go to another school anyway. So why not just take the cheaper option right now?
That's a debate that a lot of the students I mentor now have. They get into various colleges of differing degrees and levels, and finances is a major consideration. Location is a major consideration. What they can do with their degree afterwards is a major consideration. So that's the genesis of why we need to talk about this. What are the options when you're graduating for the next step in education? And how does that relate to what are your career opportunities and possibilities in that way?
Well, that's a perfect segue into our main topic. So I'm going to pose this question to you because, again, I'm looking more towards you to give me insight as well because I didn't look into this kind of stuff. So as an expert in career development yourself, what options are out there for high school graduates who want to continue on in their education?
I would start by saying, as we've reiterated in other episodes, you really have to understand what you want career-wise before you start judging the value of a particular educational path and how that's going to affect your life. As a person, any education, any learning that comes through education is going to be beneficial to you. That's all it is to it. It's going to make you a more well-rounded, developed person. But if you have an idea of what you're looking for professionally and where you want to go in life, then you can better make a decision. But that being said, what are your options? Well, I would start by saying there's lots of options for informal education or education that is not going to lead to a degree, I would say. Many of these sources lead to certificates and things like that, such as coding boot camps or trade practice courses that you can take where they teach you how to do specific things that aren't going to lead towards academic credit for a higher education institution of higher education. Then you have, other than that, you have your formal schools. You have your trade or technical schools where you go anywhere from short periods of time and take a series of classes to get a certification, or you pursue a degree from that school, which can either be associate's degree or can be a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree with a specialization in a given area. But again, those tend to be trades or functional areas. So if you haven't ever done it, I highly recommend that you go to a technical school's website, your county's technical school or the largest technical school that is within driving distance, and look at their curriculum, look at the programs that they offer, and you'll see that there are general education classes in there, English, history, things like that. Most of those classes are geared towards individuals who want to get their first year or two of college out of the way and then transfer to a traditional 4-year academic institution for a baccalaureate degree, because most of those courses transfer. But for most people going to a technical school, if that's not your agenda, if it's not to transfer to a 4-year school, look for a program that has skills-based training in the area you're interested in.
I will say too, with the technical schools and stuff, with high school students, a lot of high school students are able to do dual enrollment while they're in high school and take college classes at a technical college, and that will carry over into their college career. So that way they're starting off already having some college credits out of the way before they even make it to their college career, which is a great option.
That's a great point, and I highly recommend students doing that if they are able, coming into college, getting lots of your core courses, your basic education courses like your English, history, your mathematics, your social sciences out of the way. Oftentimes, these are prerequisites for the courses you truly want to take, like your major courses or courses within a minor or a certificate of study program. So, getting those out of the way early allows you to jump into what you want to learn earlier. So, that again is a primary focus of technical schools, allowing you to take that step over to a traditional 4-year baccalaureate program. So, there's 2 roles there with the technical school, that path or the learning a career trade. And if you know you're in one of those boats, those are strong things to consider.
Well, I want to take a step back to what you're talking about, the trade school. And I do think if you're talking about it from the perspective of getting your classes, some of your gen ed classes or core classes out of the way before you go and transfer to a bigger university, typically, and I don't know the actual statistic for this, I can look it up, but I would imagine or I assume that technical colleges have a smaller student to teacher ratio, probably within the 30 to 35 per class range. And if you're talking about being in a math class where a lot of people struggle with math, the idea of having 200 students in a class and having to be able to ask a question that you don't understand or you may be too shy to ask the question, that's going to really hinder your ability to learn in a class of 200 students. Whereas if you're in a class of 30, it's more isolated, it's more comfortable to a lot of people to be able to answer those questions. So that's just another reason why taking maybe some more difficult classes that are, gen ed classes, again, like math, at a technical college before you go to a bigger university or college.
Absolutely. And another thing you'll notice is lots of times the instructors or professors, whatever you want to call them, teaching at a technical college or trade school are going to be professionals in a given industry rather than researching academics. In that way, they're there because they want to help students, they want to teach what they've acquired knowledge in or learned, where oftentimes with professors, teaching is a side effort where their primary focus is their research and things like that, which we'll talk about in a completely different episode, the whole mechanics, the business model of the 4-year academic institution, when we talk about does the 4-year college that you go to, does it matter? That is, does it matter whether you go to state school or fancy private school? But that being said, in that technical college environment, I think you're going to be more closely connected with industry practitioners who take a more practical approach to how you're going to use the information that you're exposed to and the learning that you do in the class.
So we just finished, or we just talked about the technical side, the technical school side of it, of either using the technical school for the purpose of getting some of your core classes out of the way or learning that trade to get out there and start your professional career. What other options beyond a technical school are there?
So the next step would be to look towards the more traditional 4-year academic institution. But something that fits in there that many people don't fully understand is the junior college, the community college that has a 2-year associate's degree. The primary purpose of these schools is to prepare students to give them a stepping stone into the 4-year college environment. Oftentimes, it's for students who aren't certain that they want to go on the full distance. They tend to be more affordable, so it's less of a resource expenditure to try them out ahead of time. They lead to an associate's degree, so if you don't want to go the full 4 years to a baccalaureate institution, you can take that associate's degree and apply it to whatever career field you're going into. It's a very useful stepping stone in many ways to say, okay, I'm going to do this for 2 years and then maybe transfer to the school that I want to as well, because it allows you another shot to get the grades that you would need to transfer in or get into that other school.
So would you say it is for someone like me who I was very fortunate in the way that I learned in high school that gave me the ability to succeed in high school very well, but did not give me the ability to, or did not give me the skills of studying and note taking and such, because I'm a very audio based learner. I didn't take notes and I didn't feel like I had to study in high school, so I never learned. Would you say it would be a potentially a better route to go to JUCO first to get those basic learning skills before I go to a bigger college?
Understanding you in your position, if I were to advise you personally, I would say no, go straight on to a college. You have the knowledge, you have the experience, you have mentors in your life who had prepared you well for what to expect in college. So, as much as anything, I'm not saying that junior college is going to prepare you in a way that takes the place of or is somehow lesser than the first couple of years that you'll spend in a 4-year college. They're very comparable in nature as to what you'll learn and things like that. The junior college is a stepping stone for people who may not be ready or fully committed to the 4-year institution. And when I say not ready, it may be that you simply don't have the credentials that they require to get into your choice of school. Doing exceptionally well at a junior college for a year or two will allow you the option of transferring into other schools, save you resources, save you time like that. In your scenario, if you were highly concerned on saving money and your primary choice that you had chosen still was too expensive during that time, yeah, perhaps you spend a year taking courses at a technical college or taking courses at a junior college, which has a bit more of the traditional feel of the 4-year academic institution. It's not going to have your trade based classes the way the technical college will. So, for many people, when resources, commitment, and understanding of what you want to do and where you want to go is still in question, the junior college is an excellent, excellent option.
Yeah, and see, well, again, with my background being in accounting, my mind goes to money first, the financial side of it first. I do know that there are quite a few states out there that offer community college for free, which is a great, again, stepping stone to pursue later on going into a state college or whatnot. But getting those first year to 2 years for free is a huge help on the financial side.
Absolutely. There's, I believe, still currently approximately 17 states that offer free community college. And there's quite a few more states than that offer substantial financial assistance towards paying for community college. So, with that being said, once again, for resource allocation, it can be an excellent choice in so many ways to prepare you for the next step or to at least give you some level of direction or time to figure out your direction professionally, career wise, as to what's the next best step for you.
So we've talked about technical schools, we've talked about JUCOs, and the JUCO one was really interesting to me again because that was never on my radar. But 4-year schools, a traditional 4-year school, what would be the reason why somebody would forego that JUCO year to 2 years and just jump right into the 4 years? What's the advantage of the 4-year?
So, career wise in the professional market, the 4-year degree is the primary degree sought after by most employers who are looking for someone in the professional services realm. It's getting to the point that employers just by default, and you can't blame them, they don't know who to hire, who is dedicated, who is committed, or who has a level of maturity or drive that will help them be successful in whatever job they take on. So, school in many ways is a proxy. It's not that you're going to be using the things that you learned in school on the job. It's just that you are exposed to additional things. You have gone through the process of taking on higher learning. So, that being said, many employers today just default to the 4-year academic degree. And if you look at the employee compensation statistics that we talked about in a prior episode, you'll see there's a dramatic difference in starting pay and then the ascension through the ranks for those who receive a 4-year degree versus those who receive a 2-year degree or a technical degree or don't go to a 4-year college at all. So, from the early employment standpoint, going to a 4-year college is going to be advantageous to you, no question, career wise, based upon what employers are looking for. Now, I will say this, there are other considerations personally. Why would you want to go to a 4-year academic institution versus a trade school versus a junior college? Well, we've talked about before the benefits of education. Okay. And when I say education, it's in the broadest sense. That is learning that is not specifically tied to being able to do a specific skill or task. Training is more related to acquiring a specific skill or task in a functional area. A 4-year academic institution, most schools have some elements of the old model of liberal arts built into it. You've heard people talk about liberal arts schools versus more technical 4-year colleges like your Massachusetts Institute of Technology, your Virginia Tech, your Georgia Tech, your California Institute of Technology, these technically focused schools where there's still 4-year academic institutions that still have a great deal of the liberal arts model built into it, even though they're not a liberal arts focused school. So what you'll see there is these groupings, your liberal arts focus versus technical, where there are a lot more liberal arts 4-year academic institutions out there. And what that means is they want to create a well-rounded, well-exposed individual. They want to introduce you again to higher level of thought. That can be in your concentration or it can be generally through your general education classes. That's why you retake English. That's why you retake history, social sciences, things of that nature, because it helps you develop as a person to think outside of the box, to appreciate the points of view of those who are different than you, the people who are sitting beside you who are not the same person that you sat beside in high school. So just that aspect of it, the personal growth elements of a 4-year college is extremely important as well. So there's, once again, just like from the technical college point of view, there's really two primary focuses there on a 4-year college, the career focus and then the self-betterment focus, the self-improvement focus of general education and general acquisition of understanding, knowledge, theory to become a more well-rounded person.
Yeah, I think there's another, because we're looking at this from the betterment side. I think there's obviously other variables in a decision on where to go college-wise. Some people just want the college experience. Some people want to go to the college town. So for us, I mean, we're Georgia based. So go Dogs. We just lost, our SEC fans that aren't Georgia Dogs for our listeners, but that's okay. But they want that experience, and so sometimes again, it's all based on what you want, and this all boils down to figuring out what you want. If you want to have this balance of school and learning, but you also want to have this college experience that you've heard so much about through high school, and or your friends have gone through it, or they're going through it in the sororities and the fraternities and stuff like that. There's still that element that you're looking at too. I mean, the college town that I went to, it was, we call college, when we say college town, we mean it very loosely. It was not a college town. It had one bar in it. That was it. And there was really nothing to do outside a 45-minute drive. No really movie theater, no nothing. So we didn't have much to do, but I wasn't looking necessarily for that college experience. I was looking for, I just wanted to get my degree and get out too. So again, we understand that. I do have one other question before we go. I just kind of want your opinion on this because it seems to be, it could be very contentious. But what's your opinion on for-profit colleges?
I do not have a high opinion of them at all.
Okay.
They have an objective, and it is, like most objectives, to be profitable and to make money. Does the information that they deliver to the student have value? Of course. But honestly, the way most of the programs are structured, that value is available for free outside of the academic institution. What they tout is the accreditation that they can offer you some form of accredited degree at the end that you can put on your resume that will qualify you for some jobs. But my experience has been that employers, and certainly other academic institutions, if you're going on for a master's degree or something like that later, does not look as favorably upon these for-profit college, whatever universities, if they can get that status. They don't look very favorably upon them because oftentimes they don't have a very solid reputation. So if their model is to remain profitable, then what they are offering, they have to look at two sides of the coin: increased revenue, so they want to bring in as many students as possible, and then they want to reduce costs. Usually reducing costs goes hand in hand with offering less to your students in terms of value. That being said, if your objective with going to a for-profit college is to save money, you have to compare the money that you're saving in terms of cost with the value that you're getting. The degree is less valuable than a not-for-profit college by and large. That's a generalization, but that's generally true. So you're paying to get less. So that has to be a value consideration, but oftentimes these private colleges have a reputation as well of not being very nurturing, not bringing you along, not making certain that you're successful in your learning. It's if you continue on, great. If you don't, all they really care is to get your money the following semester and to do it at the lowest cost to them possible. And that normally is not the best overall scenario for learning.
Well, that's very cool. I appreciate you talking to all the listeners and myself about all of this information on, what's the next step after high school if you want to go the educational route. I know we're going to have another podcast here in the future about, what's the other route, which is the professional side. But I guess let's just go ahead and call this one for this episode. So that'll do it for today's episode. On next week's episode, we will be discussing a topic that was submitted to us by a student about perception. And to be honest, when I read it, it completely took me back a little bit. I wasn't expecting it. So naturally, I thought it was a good idea to bring it up on the show. But as always, be sure to drop us a line on our website or Twitter or Instagram if you have any questions. Jason, you have anything before we leave?
No, AJ, I appreciate it. I hope that this was helpful in giving people a little better understanding of what comes after college. Please look at some of our future episodes when we talk about the reputations of colleges, online colleges versus in-person, things like that. That will help you in this same vein.
Awesome. Well, y'all have a wonderful one. We'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.